The world's most famous mime learned silence in a forest. Not on a stage, not in a theater, in occupied France, at night. And for most of his life, he never told anyone why. For most of his life, the world knew Marcel Marceau as the greatest mime who ever lived. The man who could make audiences laugh, cry, and hold their breath without speaking a single word. What most people never knew was where that silence came from. Because before it became art, it was survival. Before it became applause, it was fear. And before Marcel Marceau became famous, he was helping Jewish children disappear. His father was a butcher who sang baritone while he worked. Charles Mangel had come from Poland looking for a better life and found one in Strasbourg, France. He loved music, he loved theater. Most of all, he loved taking his young son to the movies. When Marcel was 5 years old, Charles took him to see Charlie Chaplin, then Buster Keaton, then the Marx Brothers. Marcel watched men tell entire stories without speaking and became fascinated by what silence could do. Years later, he would say his whole life began in that cinema. He was right, just not in the way he meant. When Marcel was 16, Germany invaded France. The family was given hours to pack. Not days, hours. They fled southwest and eventually settled in Limoges. Marcel enrolled in art school. That part appears in every biography. What comes next usually doesn't. By 1942, Marcel Mangel was 19 years old and living two separate lives. Art student by day, resistance worker by night. He forged identity papers, food ration books, birth certificates. He scraped away names, changed dates, invented new lives. On paper, Jewish children stopped being Jewish, at least long enough to survive. He had learned how to erase people on paper. He had not yet learned how to move them in person. That lesson was coming. If you're someone who enjoys stories about ordinary people who quietly changed history, the subscribe button is right there. It only takes one tap. Most of the people we cover never became famous. Their stories deserve to be remembered. Around this time, he changed his own surname. Mangel was traceable, dangerous, too obviously Jewish. He chose a new name instead, Marceau. A name borrowed from a French revolutionary general, the name the world would eventually know. His father kept the name Mangel. That detail will matter later. In 1944, Marcel received a message from his cousin, Georges Loinger. Loinger worked with a secret Jewish rescue network called the OSE de Secours aux Enfants, the OSE. The Nazis were closing in on Jewish orphanages across France. Children needed to disappear, not on paper, in real life. And Loinger believed Marcel possessed the perfect weapon. Not a gun, not explosives, not a radio. A face. And the ability to keep frightened children completely, silently still. The orphanage stood in Sèvres, west of Paris. Inside were dozens of Jewish children. Some were only 4 or 5 years old. The plan was almost absurd. The children would be disguised as Boy Scouts. Marcel would become their scoutmaster. Together, they would travel towards Switzerland, pretending to be on holiday. If they encountered German soldiers, checkpoints, or patrols along the way, everything depended on one thing. The children could not look afraid. They could not panic. They could not cry. Marcel had only one tool. Not white face paint. Not yet. Control. Expression. Movement. The illusion that everything was normal. Before they left, Marcel performed for them. He made them laugh. He made them forget where they were. He taught them something without ever saying it aloud. You can feel terror inside and show something entirely different outside. Years later, Georges Loinger remembered. The kids loved Marcel and felt safe with him. That safety mattered because the forests were dark, the roads were dangerous, and checkpoints appeared without warning. Marcel walked at the front. When soldiers appeared, he performed. Not for applause, for their lives. He made 3 crossings, roughly 24 children each time. At least 70 children reached safety because of those journeys. We know how many survived. We do not know how many moments almost went wrong. A filmmaker who later documented the operation said, "Marceau started miming to keep children quiet as they were escaping. It had nothing to do with show business. He was miming for his life." While Marcel was walking other people's children towards safety, the Gestapo came for his father, Charles Mangel, the butcher who sang, the man who introduced his son to Chaplin, the man who taught him to love performance. He was arrested in 1944, deported to Auschwitz. He never came home. Marcel could save dozens of children. He could not save his father. Years later, someone asked him about that loss. He answered simply, "Yes, I cried for him." Then he added something else. Among those kids was maybe an Einstein, a Mozart, somebody who would have found a cancer drug. That is why we have a great responsibility. Let us love one another. Paris was liberated in August 1944. Soon afterward, Marcel gave his first major public performance. His audience was not a theater crowd. It was 3,000 American soldiers. An army that had helped end the war, that had taken his father. After the war, he entered drama school, studied under the great mime Etienne Decroux, created a character named Bip, white face, striped shirt, a battered hat with a single red flower, sad eyes, endless hope. Bip became one of the most recognizable performers on earth. For more than 60 years, Marcel Marceau performed before audiences who had no idea where the silence had begun. His official biography started in 1946, as if the years before had never happened. He created hundreds of performances. Only one was autobiographical. He called it Bip Remembers. A childhood, a father, a war. His famous routine, Walking Against the Wind, would later help inspire Michael Jackson's Moonwalk, one of the most famous silent movements in entertainment history. Tracing back to a man who learned silence while guiding children through occupied France. Near the end of his life, Georges Loinger explained something audiences always sensed but rarely understood. You see the pain and the sadness in his mime skits. The origin of that pain was his father's deportation. Marcel Marceau died in 2007 at the age of 84. The world remembers him as the master of silence. But the silence was not a performance. Not at first. It was the thing standing between 70 children and death. He learned it in a forest, at night, in occupied France. And he spent the rest of his life showing the world what it felt like to carry it. Next Tuesday, we're telling the story of a woman who saved 2,500 children from the Nazis, and almost nobody outside Poland had ever heard her name.